Hello everyone. Congratulations on being admitted to the College of Nursing at UW-Milwaukee. My name is Chris Peters and I'm Academic Affairs Coordinator for the College of Nursing. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about the background check requirement and how to meet it as part of your admission paperwork. Please note that my email address, peterscc@uwm.edu, is the fastest way to reach me with any questions related to the background check. You can click on my email address to send me an email. You can also click on the link labeled Wisconsin Caregiver Background Checks for more information about the state caregiver background check program. On this page, you can see the instructions for completing the background check portion of the requirements you'll need to complete via Castle Branch. The background check package code is UE34BG. Let's talk a little bit more about what we mean when we talk about the background check. Once you're accepted to the professional major, you're going to have to complete a few things to secure clearance to be placed in clinical sites. Part of this will require a background information form, a criminal background check, a caregiver background check, and a drug test. You can see at the bottom of this page a link that you can click on to take you to the Wisconsin Department of Health Services for more information about the background check and caregiver background check programs. This is the background information disclosure form. You may also hear us refer it to as the BID form or the BID form. When you go to your Castle Branch account and purchase package code UE34BG, the BID form will populate into your account. Download the form, answer each question following all directions very carefully, sign the form, and re-upload it to your Castle Branch account. I've highlighted a couple of areas on this form to answer a few common questions. Towards the top of the form where it reads check the box that applies to you, you have the following choices: employee, applicant, household, or other. Please check the box labeled other and specify student. Moving down into section A, questions 1 and 2 are similar and they're very important. Question 1 reads, do you have any criminal charges pending against you, including in federal, state, local, military, and tribal courts? If you were arrested and charged with a crime but have not yet gone to court, you have not yet been found guilty or innocent, please mark this question yes, specify the date, the municipality, and the charge. For example, 2019 shoplifting, Milwaukee. For question 2, it reads, were you ever convicted of any crime anywhere, including in federal, state, local, military, and tribal courts? If you went to court and were found guilty, please mark this box yes, and in the space below indicate the year, the municipality, and the charge. Again, for example, 2019 shoplifting, Milwaukee County, paid fine. If you have a history that is going to show up on a background check, you must disclose it on this form. Disclosure is an important part of demonstrating that you have taken responsibility and learned from your past. When your background check is completed, those results will be shared with the clinical agency. It is the clinical agency that determines whether or not your background check disqualifies you from participating at a specific clinical site. If you have a finding in your background that it is not disclosed on this form, a clinical site is likely to conclude that you lied on this form. By lying on this form, you are hiding a finding in your background, and you are demonstrating that you did not take accountability and learn from your mistake. A clinical agency may deny you for having a finding in your background if you lie on this form. When you read question 3, you will note that only certain employers have the right to ask this question. It has to do with abused and neglected children. As a nurse, you will be in settings where you will be caring for children, and therefore this question is relevant. Please mark the box and answer this question. As you complete this form, you should be filling out every question. If you are skipping any question for any reason, you are probably not filling out this form correctly. Once you've completed all other questions and you reach the bottom of the form, please be sure to sign and date it, then save the form. Check to make sure that the form that you are uploading to Castle Branch is the form with the completed information, and then upload the form to Castle Branch. Should you have any questions about completing this form, please reach me via email on the earlier slide. Why do we do this? First, we do it to protect the public. Second, we do it because it's required by Wisconsin's caregiver background check law. Third, we do it because it is expected of us via the affiliation agreements that we have with our clinical sites. You may be asking yourself, so what? Well, it's relevant. There are findings that may disqualify you from receiving a nurse's license. You can see in the background of this slide a list of the crimes that will bar you from licensure in nursing. If you've been convicted of any of these crimes, you must make an appointment with the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs to discuss the implications of your background history upon receiving a license. Some of you may be asking yourself, I have a criminal record. Will my record be a problem? The answer is complicated. It's important to understand that UW-Milwaukee does not discriminate against students for having a finding in their criminal background. However, our affiliation agreements require that we submit your criminal background findings to each clinical agency each semester that you are placed. Each individual clinical site will use their own human resources policies to determine whether your background is suitable for placement in their agency or not. They do this using a criteria called substantively related offenses. However, each agency determines what is or is not substantively related based on their own criteria. For example, if you're applying for a job as a truck driver and you have a finding of drunk driving in your background, it's easy to see the relationship between drunk driving and being a truck driver. But how does a conviction for drunk driving relate to being a nurse? Most clinical agencies will look at that and say that unless you have a long pattern of arrests, it's unlikely that a drunk driving conviction will affect whether or not you're a good nurse. However, multiple drunk driving arrests and convictions may indicate that you have a substance abuse problem. Another tricky finding can be findings related to theft. Some clinical agencies look at a finding for shoplifting and say, well, we're not a retail store, so it is unlikely that a nurse would steal from us. Other clinical agencies look at a finding for theft and say hospitals are full of valuable things that may find their way home in someone's pocket. Not only expensive medical equipment, but also drugs. Therefore, a finding of theft may be substantively related at other clinical sites. Each clinical site will evaluate all students' backgrounds every semester and determine whether those students are suitable for placement or not. If you are placed at a clinical site which denies you because of a finding in your criminal background, the College of Nursing will make a good faith effort to find you an alternative clinical placement. If you have a finding in your criminal background and you are questioning whether or not it may complicate your clinical placement, please reach out to me by my email address and we can discuss it. I don't have a record. I'm in the clear, right? Well, there's a couple of other things that can still trip you up. First of all are expunged records. Some people will work with an attorney to have an item from their background check expunged. What they're told is that these items will be erased and won't be able to be held against them. It's important that you understand our criminal background checks are conducted through the Department of Justice, not through the clerk of court system. Expunged records will still be found on your background check. If you have any undisclosed offense that shows up on the background check through the Department of Justice, it may still be held against you and render you ineligible for clinical placement. If you have any question about whether or not a finding from your background should be disclosed on the BID form, please contact me. The last thing I want to mention is collateral damage. Now that you've been accepted to the nursing major at UW-Milwaukee, you want to make sure that nothing happens to add to your criminal background while you're in the nursing program. Any arrest must immediately be disclosed to the College of Nursing, and this may affect your current clinical placement. For example, sometimes folks may decide that they're going to go to Taco Bell with a group of friends. If you're the driver and one of your friends riding in the backseat of your car has drug paraphernalia with them, and you get pulled over for a traffic stop, if no one in the car takes responsibility for that drug paraphernalia, the driver is the one that receives the ticket. In this situation, you as the nursing student who was driving are going to be punished for bad things that other people did, and that may impact your clinical placement and progression through the major. Please be very careful about the types of things that you do. You don't want anything to happen that will interrupt your progress through the nursing major. Background checks can be complicated. If you have any questions about your background check and how it might impact your clinical placement in the College of Nursing, please email me at petercc@uwm.edu or just click the link on this slide.